big fat piggie. Oh, see.
Up. Hello, how's everyone tonight? This is Facechook Live, Melbourne Musos. My name's Quinlan. Wow. See the big fat piggie. Now, Brucey baby, Bruce Aitken. How are you tonight? How's everyone? I better turn these sound effects off. Hang up and try again. How are you all tonight? Good? There you go. All right. See the big fat piggie. Bruce Aitken. Your first cab off the rank, mate. And I've got a couple of beautiful questions from beautiful people and all that. And what I want to do tonight is welcome you to the show. It's Facechook Live, Melbourne Musos, the live component. This will go on a Wednesday night at 10 o'clock in a few weeks, I hope. And what goes on is Bruce Aitken has asked me specifically about minim triplets. Okay. Now, to do that, what I've got to do is basically do a little bit of triplet work for you. Okay, so what happens with triplets in the most basic of ways when you're teaching it for the first time is that triplets are a group of 3 notes played in the time of 2 of the same kind. Now, when you're trying to teach that to beginning students, that's a long definition. Cut a long story short, you just say 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, 4 under. And so what you do is you might have your 4 on the floor bass drum. 1 and 2 under, 3 under, 4 under, 1 and 2 under, 3 under, 4 under, 1 and 2 under, 3, like that. Now what goes on is that what happens is if you've got just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 ends, right, quavers, 1 and 2 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that really is a 3 against 2 polyrhythm. But if you try and teach that to a little poppet, they're just going to go sort of thing. Mum, I want to play flute instead. You see? So what goes on, like you do it in flute as well, but now, Shannon. There you go. So what goes on is that in and of its nature, a triplet is a polyrhythm. You see, because you're playing 3 in the time of 2. So what do we have? The hemiola from Hispaniola. I crap on about that all the time, but that's what happens with triplets. But Bruce, you've asked me about minim triplets. So what happens is that the definition is still 3 in the time of 2. So you've got to play 3 minims in the time of 2 minims. But how do you do it? You see. So if I do, say, a bit of a jazz thing, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... They're normal triplets, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, and they're quaver triplets, you see. Now, what happens? By taking every second one, I've now turned them into crotchet triplets, you see. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, you see. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, you see. What you often have, you know, like that, they're not uncommon, you know. Give it a shot. Oh, we're halfway there. So Bon Jovi, that kind of thing there. So that's what goes on. They're crotchet triplets, but what you want to do, they're every 2. So if you're saying 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a crotchet is every 2. 1, so 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. So given that a crotchet, okay, is half of a minim is 2 beats. So what you do is that you would actually play minim triplets every 4. So this is what would happen. I'll do it this way. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. What I'm really doing is just 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the rub is to do it in a triplet kind of way. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. You see, that's what goes on. There you go. So they're minim triplets, you see. Now what happens with that is if you're playing 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a, what happens then is that essentially what starts to go on with this is that because you've got 3 minims inside one bar of 4/4, what you're doing is essentially playing now a 3 against 4 polyrhythm, you see. So what do we have? C, the big fat piggy, C, the big fat piggy, C, the big fat piggy, C, the big fat piggy. Gotta love it. C, the big fat piggy. So what happens is this. C, the big fat piggy, C, the big fat piggy. Yeah? There you go. All right. So what happens is that if you're playing, say, a blues, right? Do da 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 ba 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 ba. There's the 4, right? So my hi-hat's playing 3 and my left hand's playing 4. And essentially, in that kind of context, that is what happens over a bar, you see, with minim triplets, you see. So what you've got there is a polyrhythm that comes... I'm sitting on my chord, sorry about that. So what happens is what goes with that, with C, the big fat piggy, is the basic thing about that is a common denominator when you're working polyrhythm. So let me give you the definition of polyrhythm so you can work out minim triplets and any other kind of thing you want to work on, is the fact that you, if you're playing 3 in the time of 2, what happens then is you're now playing 3 in the time of 4, you see. So 3 4s are 12, okay? And if you want 3, you play the 3 every 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you see. And then you play the 4 every 3. 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4. And that's the easy bit. So if I've got... So that's a kind of a minim triplet-based thing. Now this brings me into things like notes within notes and all sorts of stuff. Because if you're sort of doing, say, a crotchet triplet, say, Bruce, what you've got is... that's what it is there. I can't even stress the importance of learning to do that. Okay, right, both the right, both the right, both the left. There's your crotchet triplets, you see. Notes within notes. Now that's a baramadoodle there, and what happens is I've got this going. 1, 2 to 3, oops, sorry. And then paradiddle it. So what you've got there is a crotchet triplet, but then you've got 4 inside every count, you see. Now this is Frank Zappa business, King Crimson business, this is prog metal business, Dream Theater business. It's a lot of business, you see. So what goes on is that you work in the notes within notes. And I've talked in the past about how do you get a good groove and all this sort of stuff, or how do you get the right groove and all that, and you work the in-betweens, you see. So what happens with the in-betweens is that when you're actually dealing with, say, a polymetric piece that Stravinsky would write, or John Cage would write, in the classical realm, that sort of business. What would happen is that you have what's known as nested polyrhythms. Now, this is the specialty of Frank Zappa and the Black Page, for instance, that I've played in the past. I won't play it tonight. But what happens is that with this kind of stuff, you start to bounce off two rhythms, you see. So you not only have polyrhythm, but you can also have polymetrics. And polymetric is the art of two time signatures put together. Whereas the polyrhythm is like a 3 against 2, where you play essentially triplets inside, a normal 4/4 or whatever. Now, the one thing, like I said earlier, when you're teaching little poppets and all that, that's a very tricky, definition, you see. So you keep it as simple as you can. So it's just 3 in the time of 2. That's better. And that's what goes on there. So what you have is 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... But Teacher to the Stars, Gary Chaffee, who's taught Steve Smith and Vinnie Colaiuta for 2 famous ones. Whenever you see his books, he's always got 3/2, 3 against 2. And that lends itself to, he's a university guy, right? He's actually doing the super advanced lessons and all that. And, of course, when you can boast Steve Smith and Vinnie Colaiuta as 2 past students, you're on the right track, I would think. But that kind of teaching needs to be simplified somewhat when you're teaching little poppets and all that sort of stuff. And just to get a basic handle on it, that kind of thing there. Okay, so what happens is, where was I? I was doing See the Big Fat Piggie. You see, what happens is, when I say hippopotamus, Gina Lola Brigida, all these kinds of things, it's mnemonic. That's the term, mnemonics. And so there's your 4 and there's your 3, right? See the big fat piggy, see the big fat piggy. 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1. Up, 2, 3, 1. I woke up this morning. There it is. Bruce. Ooh. There it is there. That chain puller. A chain with yellow lights that glistens like oil beads. Why am I doing bebop poetry in the middle of a polyrhythm lesson? It's because I'm actually off straight after Facechook Live, and I'm off to Jimmy Hornets if you want to come and have a or anything like that. I'll be there on the second set with good mate Victor and Mike, and we share jokes about young Frankenstein. Frau Blucher. Yeah. And we're doing a bit of Tom Waits and stuff like that. And I made a joke about a bit of spoken word, a bit of Bukowski and stuff like that. But we have a mutual love of that kind of thing. And then when you start to talk about Tom Waits, one of the people he loved is Captain Beefheart. And in the not too distant future, Deeezil Zappa is coming out, he's playing Hot Rats, and someone's gonna sing Willie the Pimp just like Captain Beefheart did on that album. Fat cheek puller, fat cheek puller. So I'm gonna do a bit of spoken word here. Word here. With the aforementioned minim triplets, Brucey baby. Chain with yellow lights that glistens like oil beads. On its slick, smooth trunk that trails behind tracks and dumps. A wing hangs limp and retrieves. Bulbs shoot from its snoot and vanish into darkness. It whistles like a root snatched from dry earth. Sodbust and rakes with grey dust claws this brain with grey tube that houses people's buried thoughts and belongings. Have I lost you yet? Anyway, so that's what it is. That's what. 4 against 3. There's your minim triplets, Bruce. And then what you do is, I'm moving into the nested polyrhythm stuff, and what you do is discombobulate, sort of. Do you see what I mean? And that's what goes on there. So you want to keep going? A grey cloth patch, clawed with 4 threads in the hollow wings of its stacks. Ripples fell fades and grey sparks clacks, lunge into cushioned pickets. Pumpkins span the hills with orange-grey olive patches. Green inflated trees. Get out of the way, tambourine. Balloon up into marshmallow soot that walks away in faulty circles. Because we're doing Tom Waits tonight, he loved Captain Beefheart. He also loved a bebop poet by the name of Lord Buckley. Beautiful beat poet. With twinkling lights and green sashes, pulled by rubber dolphins with gold dawning mouths that blister and break in agony. Zones of rust, they build gold sawdust into dust. That chain puller. Puller, puller. That chain puller. Puller, puller. See, big fat piggy. Big fat piggy. Now what can happen when you're doing things like this, all this weird shit, you can get a 3 against 2 Yeah. There it is there. I haven't even explained that. Both left, right, left. Both left, right, left. You see? Normally it's both right, left, right. So I'm doing the opposite, eh? So. Now, you've got 3, right? So you got... Now with this, why not put a 5 there? Now, let me explain that. That's a polymetric. So that's a polyrhythm, I should say. I got them around the wrong way. That's a polyrhythm. And then with this one here, I'm actually playing 2. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So think of that like if you like 2, 8. But because I changed the toms, I'm now implying 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I'm doing that, what actually goes on is that's a polymeter, you see, because I'm overlaying 5, 8 over the top of 2, 8, you see. Clever shit, hey? Frank Zappa, prog, in the good old days prog, new prog, next gen prog. That's what it is. And you're layering rhythms, okay? Now, this is not new. This is Stravinsky. Go listen to La Sacre du Printemps, okay, from, oh my God, 106 years ago, okay? Caused a sensation. I had to study it in year 12. Page by page. I once did a whole show on it, actually, and drummed it, kind of, in my own funny old way. But anyway, what I'm trying to do here is sort of show you how you can, when I say discombobulate, you sort of separate things, you know, when you get when you're doing your rudiments, you start to try and get independent, you see. So what happens is, let's take a paradiddle. What happens is that when you're first learning it, and I'll just do it on the hi-hat so it's not quite so loud and I can talk over the top, is the fact that it is right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, paramadoodle, you know, paradiddle, you go crazy. But then you get 2 groups, right? Right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. So it becomes right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. There it is there. So that's what happens there. But what happens if we change the timing of it? You see, because normally it's like 1 iana, 2 iana, 3 iana, 4 iana, 1 iana, 2 iana, you know, all that sort of business. But what happens if we do things like when we pick it up a bit? Now, of course, we're thinking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But what happens if we think of it like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 Shannon. Weird, huh? I've got to whip out a weird one every now and again. Or are they all weird? Maybe I should do a straight one day. Alrighty. So there it is. Now I have to start thinking about finishing up. And I've got another question. Andrew, how are you? Carl Palmer. He talked about the half-inch custom-made steel drum kit of the glory days of prog, where he's hitting every cymbal at the same time. Beautiful. And then our Carl would take his t-shirt off and show his glorious, glowing rock and roll prog god chest to everyone, and everyone would swoon with the timpani, you know, that kind. Brilliant. But what happens? We're doing half-inch steel, and it fell through the stage. It was Emerson, Lake and Palmer went to a gig, and the famous story. It was so heavy. It was something like some kind of tonnage, and they put it on the stage, and the stage broke, and there it was. Hey, going down there, Carl. Can someone winch me out? Thanks very much. I'll be up in time for my drum solo. Get my timpanis tuned for me. And the gong. Got to have a gong in prog. Anyway, there you go. So what happens now is that when you're dealing with stuff like that, you get tones. Now this is Doris, of course. There you have it. This is 7-ply maple, Andrew, and with Evans UV1 heads. That's a stainless steel snare drum, tuned a little on the low side. And then I've got the chrome piccolo toms, devised by Terry Bazio. And you get the errant rattles for free. That's a pentatonic scale. First, flat third, fourth, fifth, flat 7 octave. And if I take that to one side, there's the flat 5. So my little snare to the left here is there, right? So, sorry. So back to minim triplets. And what it is 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. You see, that's your counting, you see. So what happens? Is notes with it, notes. That 1 and a 2 and a 3 and 4. 1 and a 2 and a 3 When I do splash hats, that's 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, open, closed. But I'm thinking 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. The old Zappa band, Zappa Instrumental, we used to play a Zappa tune called Redunzel. And it was a blues beat, but the feel of it was Bruce, that same triplet kind of feel. It's like a blues beat. There you go. And I'm sort of doing that because of Deeezil coming out in a month or two, because I'm doing the Captain Beefheart, because they're gonna do Willie the Pimp, because they're doing the whole of the Hot Rats album. Glorious, I tells you. It's 6:30. I better wrap it up. So what happens is, Andrew, I haven't finished the story yet. The different kinds of tones. As I said, this is 7-ply maple on a DW. I've got a drum kit over there that is made of beech, not birch, beech wood, but covered in rosewood, one layer on the outside. So you've got the beautiful thing of hardwood on the inside, beautiful soft rosewood, which is now endangered. All that sort of stuff. Terrible. But nevertheless, there it is over there. And beautiful dense sound when it gets thicker. It's 13 plies, thank you very much, umpire. All that sort of stuff. And what happens is that the thicknesses, what you asked of me, Andrew, is the fact that it tends to give more of a denser sound, that kind of thing. And when you're dealing with metal, there it is there's chrome, albeit piccolo. Isn't that beautiful? And have a listen to that. That's a 5-inch maple. Oh, the ping of destiny, I tells you, Andrew. And this is a little bit dry. I've got it down a little bit, that's why. Oh, I'm off again, bloody hell. All right, I'm going to let you all go, but that's what goes on. And then what happens, Andrew, to finish that off, is that you can get different kinds of things. Like back in the 70s, I had a Pearl Diner family. That was made of fiberglass. And that was the real Phil Collins kind of, with the black dot skins. They were all the rage, I can feel it coming in the night. That kind of thing. But anyway, many different kinds of woods out there. DW, you have John Good, who is called the Wood Whisperer. He travels the world finding beautiful pieces of wood to make drum kits from. And some of them are just, you wouldn't even want to play them, just call it art, sort of thing. You have the Romanian river wood, a dried up riverbed in Romania. They found a couple of trees there. They carbon dated them, and they're like 1,100 years old. So we bought them, made 200 kits or something like that, all numbered, and each one was 20 grand, that kind of thing. But that is real artisan stuff, That's the nth degree. You wouldn't want to take it to, share kit night, would you? Shit. He'd be there going, no, my baby. The punk rockers got my baby. Shannon. There you go. I'm off. I'm going to keep this short. I've already wankified it enough tonight, but I hope I've answered your question, Bruce. It's a bit of a weird one because we've got a little bit of beat poetry coming up, Willie the Pimp coming up. I've got Tom Waits coming up. We out west where the wind don't blow. All this sort of business. I'm doing all this sober. Anyway, there you go. That chain puller. And there you have it. My name is Chris Quinlan. This is Melbourne Musos Facechook Live. And in a couple of weeks, I will dare to put this on Channel 31. Wish me the best of luck. And what will happen is I will see you either tonight at Jimmy Hornet. Come and have a bet, that, or a martini. Something like that. A little bit. I think it's a little bit, bit groovy, sort of thing. A little bit debonair. And and then after that, Wednesday, 10 o'clock, if you want to watch. And there you go. Thank you. And I'll put this back up. Oh, sure enough. I'm out of here. I will see you on the flip side. Take care. And